Do, 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 do. There we go. SEO this week. Hey everyone, this is Clint Butler here with Digitaleer for SEO this week. Episode 103, I think. 103, 104. I gotta look at the numbers. But I'm joined today by Ted Kubitis. He's been bugging me, like endlessly. He's kind of a pest. How you doing, Ted? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm just here to ask questions and be annoying and interrupt your flow.
Yeah, I've been inviting people to do it so much, and it's finally nice to have someone actually just come in and say hi. So I appreciate it. So with all that chit chat out of the way, I was telling Ted I coughed today, and I've done this before, and I actually tore a muscle in my side. Didn't know you could do that, but apparently you can. And it's the second time it's happened. So if I cough today and then fall down and disappear off the screen, it's because I'm crying in pain. But it's not too bad, but I took some Aleve and stuff. So hopefully we'll get through this. I got my Monster Energy drink, keep everything going. And so with that said, if I pause or sound like I have tears in my voice, then now you know why. I'm a big pussy. I know. I get hurt and I cry. So that's the way it is. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started on the stories for this week. And it's actually pretty limited. I went through 285 articles this month. In case you guys don't know, I use curation tools, and I use BuzzSumo, and I use RSS feeds, and I have Google Alerts set up. And I want to learn more and more about SEO and different aspects of it. So I set all this stuff up, and then it lets me curate the stories. The downside of doing that is you realize how much SEOs, being guys like me, you, Ted, we all write the same crap over and over and over again. And I don't really understand how we're getting away with it as an industry. Even some of the best sites write the same stuff over and over again. It gets a little bit frustrating, and seeking out new and exciting pieces. With that being said,
can I ask a quick question?
Go ahead.
How long does it take you to go through 285 articles? Because that's a staggering number.
I start putting next week's together like today. I'll be putting next week's together already. So once a day, I just spend maybe an hour, 2 hours going through the stuff that's coming in from that week or that day. Or other times, if I get really busy, I'll end up spending like half a day trying to do that madness. So it does take a lot of time. It's horrible, honestly, the amount of time that I spend reading other people's stuff. So
yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's it's kind of a love-hate relationship. I love doing this show. I love being able to talk to people, but when you consider the background work that it takes to actually put one of these together, it's kind of a big deal. So I hope you all appreciate me. That's my fishing for compliments.
Well, I'm impressed. I like to go big or go home. That's I should have T-shirts made and going big.
That's the best way, though, right? Okay, so article number 1. This one just popped out like right after I closed the last week's show. Pretty quick and start spreading around. Is Google changed the way the service area businesses and GMB work. Now, they've always had service area businesses, and I don't know if you've tried to rank them and stuff, but they are a little bit trickier to rank. But on the flip side, I actually found in some cases they're actually easier to rank than the specific ones, just depending on where you're searching from, etc. So now you can actually have a specific address set up, which is the same as before, or a service area. And you can also, which is new, delete your address completely from the GMB after you set your service areas. And play around with that a little bit too. I'll leave that at that with the whole play around with that a little bit, but you can change the service areas and who you're targeting, etc. One thing I would caution you to worry about is if you have multiple location places, when you're setting your service areas, make sure you're using zip codes and that those service areas don't overlap. because then you'll end up just taking both of those maps out of the equation, especially in that overlap area. It's just make sure that's just one of those kind of things. Probably most of you should know or know, but that'll help you out in kind of leveraging this a little bit better. There's brief instructions on how to do it and how to change it here. As you know, GMB's not; these guys aren't always the clearest on setting those up. But if you're going to set it up for a brand new business, do the service areas right from the get. Do your research. Make sure you have all of your zip codes in advance. You can do the cities, but again, if you have multiple locations, it kind of overlaps. You don't want to do that. So make sure you have the zip codes ready to set those up. And then you can also edit your current listings and change those into kind of a store it first thing, service area thing, or a store address specific location. I like mixing them both up, especially if you are, if your client or you are doing a service where they can either come to your store or you can go out to them, and you just kind of articulate that, and maybe even do a 10, 15, 20 mile radius depending on what you're selling to draw those people in and get that local maps relevance going on right there. So again, so check that out in your GMB accounts. This one Ted might actually like. I don't know about you guys, but I've been dinking around with semantically recreated content using AI. I am nowhere near smart enough to implement this stuff. And my guys in the mastermind, there's a couple dudes in there that are playing around with different tools. Now, me being a simple Simon guy, I kind of just found plugins and tools that kind of sort of leverage what they're doing. But
yeah, what Clint just said is it sounds like what they're doing is they're using AI to spin instead of random number generators to spin.
Yeah, and they're using I don't want to get too into it. I'm trying to limit what I say, but they're using, for lack of because I don't want to be specific and give away something that a mastermind is not supposed to be. But let's say you're using LSI, you're using an LSI tool in Cora. They're pulling all that stuff and then they're looking at the content that's surrounding those LSI terms and using that to generate content.
Yeah, because the current state of natural language processing, which is an area of AI, and it does things like parts of speech tagging and subject predicate mapping and finding all of the clauses in a sentence and remapping them. What you can do with that technology is say, given this input sentence, rephrase it such that it has the exact same meaning. And I think that's what these people are probably attempting to do.
Yeah. Honestly, it's way over my head, but I think it's something that, we as SEOs should leverage even within our understanding. So if your understanding is TDIDF or TFIDF, I think yeah. So, if your understanding of that is limited there, then just go after that and kind of go after those low-hanging fruits and stuff. But if you're into the technical and you want to do AI and all that other stuff, then getting in a mastermind and sharing those kind of things is going to be beneficial for you well into the future. So, which is how I found Wordlift, because they're using schema to create essentially how the plugin works is you put the plugin on your site and you pick topics. So you see the topics here just for an example: artificial intelligence, cluster analysis. And you can, as you write your post, it'll find those terms and create a vocabulary on your website or leverage word lifts that is wrapped in schema. And now you add some relevance using the schema because you're tagging these terms. And actually, you can link it if you want to, or just put it in the schema. And then think of it like a super powered Wikipedia or a mini Wikipedia in this case. You can turn your website in that. And that's how I found Wordlift. I talked to it's $99 a month I got 5 sites on my account, and it's $99 a month. I talked to the people that set it up or that run this, and they hold a actual like a welcome tutorial. It's crazy simple process to actually knock it out, but this would be something that you guys might want to take advantage of if you don't know how to do all that, natural language processing and all that other stuff. You can kind of dabble in it and just playing with Wordlift, and you can improve your schema skills at the same time. So
Okay, so yeah, this is a bit different than generating content. This is just adding entities for relevancy.
yep, and that's how I found it. Was I was doing the NLP stuff, and I found Wordlift as part of that. It's kind of like the baby steps to the NLP. You are not necessarily, you can create your own entities, which is pretty cool with this tool. And as well as it just finds out you can do a process. So you don't necessarily have to have the plugin. Once you figure out the process, you can have your team knock this stuff out for you, if that's what you want to do.
What I would imagine, so they're gambling that schema is a ranking factor for terms, and that may or may not be true. But what this could potentially do for your pages is expand your pages to rank for a broader selection of relevant terms. And that would yield you more organic traffic potentially. So I think there are two fronts that this could win. If schema is a ranking factor, then woohoo boost. But if not, then you have an expanded net of relevant keywords to rank for, which could net you more traffic.
Or on the other one is when you're talking about entity establishment, which is the big thing nowadays. And the way this schema is written up, it's pulling in the authority. It's kind of like when you're doing outbound linking and you choose authority sites. Inside the schema that this thing generates are those authority sites and trusted resources to increase your authority as, why you're writing about this, where did you research this information kind of thing.
So there's with that, there's three possible benefits.
Yeah. And obviously more as this thing expands. I will tell you that if you guys are using Gutenberg, and all but 2 of our clients use Gutenberg, this plugin does not work with Gutenberg. So, but they said it's going to work in like 2 weeks. That's what they told me. So we'll see. With that being, so this post obviously is machine learning search engine optimization, and this is something that Ted might actually enjoy because he's a programmer genius. There are some other tools that do this, but basically what this post is walking you through is how to pull your data out of the Google Search Console and combine that with the scrape from a tool like Screaming Frog or Sitebulb to find the pages that are in a position to rank but not ranking very well, and optimizing those pages based off of impressions versus position. So you can have number 3, 4 position rankings, but the search volume is really low. So why would you spend your time trying to rank that when you can look at the impressions, see that your impressions are high but your click-through rate is really low and your position's like 5 or 6, and visualize that data. I'll scroll down here just so you can see. Ted might enjoy this because it's got graphs and shiny stuff. And let me zoom in. So as you can see, the impressions are higher, but the positions are lower. So now you know that these are your targets versus just messing with these that are over here, and kind of being scatterbrained. So this entire process that they're going through here just kind of tells you how to do that using Google Sheets, and I think it's pretty cool. I'm going to implement that. Which brought me to another thing is we could probably do something like this, Ted, with Quora, in so much as the LSI tab and text tools. If you know what that is, I'm sure you do, Ted. But inside of there, they have the LSI, and then they graph it out and show where your site is. I was thinking I'm going to play around with the same process and try to visualize that output from Quora.
This particular line item you have, the number 2, positions don't matter as much as impressions, is a really cool concept, because what they're saying there is your rankings are a result, but the impressions are the opportunity.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to only focus on the result. You want to look for the opportunity. And yeah, I'm all on board with finding the opportunity.
And plus, if you ever followed me before, I'm a really big proponent of PPC, and you're using PPC to find the impressions in the first place. So a lot of this data here will reinforce that you're on the right track with your SEO campaigns, and you're not wasting your time. Because just here, look at this. This is all great and wonderful, but look at how the rankings that they have, but there's no impressions, and then it kind of carries on a little bit more and more. So they spent all this time ranking for all this stuff that doesn't really generate much for them, and I think we've all done it, and they're probably all still currently doing it. But this little sample here is where all your traffic's at. So something to good think about. If you can kind of figure this stuff out inside of Google Search Console without doing all this technical shiny charts and everything. But I think once you set this up and just kind of copy paste it for your clients, there's another deliverable for you too, make you look fancy and show that you know what you're talking about. So a couple of good opportunities with this one. So machine learning, don't let it scare you. It's not really machine learning. It's just using data visualization. You can play with some other tools if you know how to do all that stuff. Next, write short sentences and paragraphs the right way. This was cool because, Ted, I don't know if you know, like SAA, Kyle did a test on that, was it Flesch reading scale? Is that how you spell it?
Yeah, the Flesch-Kincaid readability.
Right, and he said that it doesn't have, or that's what the test came out as, it doesn't have like a value for SEO.
There's a problem with that algorithm. That algorithm was made for the Navy to try and figure out how effective training manuals would be for new recruits. So it was very specific to a certain culture in a certain time frame and in a very basic way. And so the way that algorithm works is off of the number of syllables in a word makes a word harder. And so in general, it would say that the word cherub is equally difficult to the word cartoon, but we all know that if you go out to the population, far more people will know what a cartoon is versus a cherub. So, that's kind of the flaw. And then when you go to different cultures, then the bias can really stand out. And so, yeah, the Flesch-Kincaid readability score, it's unlikely to be a factor. Plus, the other thing is people would argue that the more effort you put into writing, the more broadly effective it would be to a whole population, which means that more effort should bring down the reading grade level requirements. So if you're writing as if it's for the New Yorker or for a medical research journal, that's not necessarily effective communication to an audience. So yeah, that algorithm in particular is highly suspect in my opinion.
So there you go. You broke that all down. What I liked about this post is because a lot of people were just trying to figure out how to break down the sentences and stuff, just to make it a little bit easier to click through and less daunting. Because the more, like this section right here, if I came to a blog and it was all like this, I probably wouldn't read all of it, or I'd read through, start of it, and then get bored and then start thinking about chocolate bars or something. So I like busting my paragraphs up like this as well, and this is a really good way to learn how to do it in a writing style that makes it cohesive and doesn't look like you just kind of hit the enter key randomly. So this is a good post. Not really an SEO post, but I think you guys will enjoy that. Here's a guy that's Cognitive SEO. They've been putting out some decent content lately, and it's how to write for SEO in 2019, a step-by-step guide. The reason why I pointed this out is a lot of people who were talking about how to do or how to use their they have this content assistant in one of their tools, and basically you go in, you plug in your word, your keyword, and then then you give it the content, and it'll help you and optimize it. Sort of like, I don't want to say it's like Pop or Quora, but it pulls those two concepts together a little bit and creates content. I've played with it when they first launched it. I'm not a subscriber to Cognitive SEO anymore, but there are a lot of people preaching the effectiveness of that thing. So it's definitely something to try and combine when if you're taking your Quora reports and using the LSI sheet, write your content and then plug it into this tool and see how effective that is for you. I know there are some content stuff coming up in Page Optimizer Pro. Kyle's working on that. I probably, knowing him, I expect that like 2 or 3 months out. But in the meantime, I suggest go ahead, read the post. It doesn't talk too much about the tool, and then click on this link and fire it up and try that tool for yourself, just to see if it's going to be something valuable for you. Honestly, there are people that swear by it and say that content helps significantly. Jordan Pierce is one of those. If you follow him on, he does Google Maps and stuff, and he swears by that assistant, especially when he's making his mass sites to support his GMB ranking. So something to check out. And then the rest of this post actually has some value, but I think most of us are kind of beyond the stuff that they're reading here, and a little bit of pimping the tools, but that'd be some good information. And then finally is how to download linked URLs from the Google Search API. This is, Ted, I don't know if you ever heard. I think it was Bill from SIA. He said that you have to pull the links out of Search Console multiple times in order to get all of them. And I thought that this being able to pull through the API would actually save you from having to do that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's twofold. Over time, Google will give you a random sample. So if you pull multiple times, you often get slightly different random samples. So combining multiple and deduping gets you your largest sample size. The other problem is that if you have a website that simply has a ton of data, your random sample, is going to be less significant to your overall data. So if you have a small website, you're probably getting most of your data. And if you have an absolutely massive internet concern, you're probably getting something that's statistically insignificant.
Right.
So your situation can vary wildly depending upon where you fall on that spectrum.
But do you notice that the API gives you more or less than if you actually download it manually?
Oh, I'd believe it would give you more. And oftentimes there are surprises. Like I know going through the AdWords API in the past, you'd find a whole lot of things that you would never surface through the AdWords reporting on the Google website. So in general, yeah, the APIs give you access to a great deal more that you would otherwise never see.
Right. So for users, if you guys have never dinked around with this, you'll go to this page, the link's up right here. It's the Google Search Console API service, and you'll come in here and you actually fill out this information right on the site. So you don't have to have a software to pull out of it. This goes through step-by-step of how to use those pages. There's a bunch of them, but the actual setup here, the steps is the same. So just go play around with that. Again, I like the concept of being able to pull more links from URLs out of there and making sure that I have a full picture of what is going on with the backlinks, in particular with how Google thinks what is going on with the backlinks. I'm not totally convinced that they're always going to give you all your backlinks anyway. Like Ted was saying, there's a sampling thereof. I think you're just never going to get all of them from Google, because Google is doing it on purpose to say, hey, we don't want to show all the ones that we're counting for ranking, so you can't go back and replicate. That's what I think.
If you have a one-page website with 2 backlinks, you'll probably get them all.
Yeah. Maybe. We'll see. All right, and the last one is actually Twitter, and this has been going around quite some time. I don't know if you guys know Grindstone. He's been around Wicked Fire. He's started in tons of like 800-pound gorilla niches, and he's doing local and doing maps now. And this is an SEO case study, and it's really comprehensive in so much as you can do it on Twitter. And he doesn't post on blog posts. And I know a lot of people complain because he didn't write this on a blog post. Well, that was by design, because Twitter stuff, it kind of doesn't get, oddly enough, it doesn't get syndicated all that much. And a lot of people won't spend the time to read through all of these. And he did it on purpose. But basically what he's talking about is different ways to use anchors and brands, and how that leverages to a national campaign with link building. So this is really good. Let's see. I think there's like 17 tweets, 18, 19. He expanded on this, 22, 25, 28, 31 tweets to the whole story. So read this out. Really good. Grind is smart as hell. It's probably one of the smartest link builders I know. So I suggest that you take the time to read this Twitter series. Again, he doesn't put out a lot of content on purpose. Last time I know that he publicly shared anything, someone took that and turned it into a course and sold it as a course. And that's probably before this, the last time he's actually publicly shared any link building stuff. So once that opportunity is there, so you should take advantage of it. Hey Ted, I heard you have a new show.
Yeah, SEO Fight Club just did episode 1, and tomorrow we do episode 2, and we're gonna bring some pretty amazing, mind-blowing content tomorrow.
Yeah, and I joined this up, guys. I signed on with Ted for this because I wanted to be the dummy of the group, and it really, I know Ted's vision, and I think he's going to step up the game in the amount of stuff that we're actually passing out to people. So the first episode is on keyword density, and does it matter? And I think there's some really good test results in that episode. You guys should go ahead and watch just to get the flow of the show. Ted, you plan on keeping those short, right? Like 15, 30 minutes on average?
Yeah, the goal is to keep them shorter, but they'll be what they are for the debate. I don't want to cut people off.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mentioned that just because it's easier, guys, so you can plan ahead. If you want to go live, or if you want to have, you got a half-hour drive or something like that, that's a good thing to play in the background. So check that out. Subscribe to it. And again, SEO This Week will be on Tuesdays, and SEO Fight Club is on Wednesdays. So you have your full set of information for the week. And if I find something on SEO this week, I'll give it to Ted, and and Kyle and those guys will test it and make sure that the content that we find is not full of crap. So that's a good opportunity to kind of tie these two together and their purpose. Alrighty, and the next segment, Ted, I don't know if you know, but we do tips, and I wanted to talk about PageSpeed this week.
Oh, I love this tool.
Yeah. Let me close these. I want to get this out.
Well, while he's getting ready, I think everybody in the world should build their websites for the person who's standing in line at the bus stop on a 4G connection on their mobile phone. Mm-hmm. And they're going to your website and they're trying to buy your widget. Did you build that experience for that person? Because if you raise the bar for that one person, you're lifting all boats for everybody by designing for that guy.
Very true. Very true. I like to, when I talk to people about mobile optimization and speed, is I have them look in their analytics. Where is your traffic coming from right now? So a lot of people say that, let's go for over-the-top SEO and Digitaleer, 95% of our traffic is desktop traffic. People aren't looking for our specific pieces of content or our service in mobile right now.
Well, if you want to see the damage, you need to go into your Google Analytics and you need to filter down to people on 4G wireless connections, and then look at your page load times and look at your conversion rates. And if you start looking at those experiences, I mean, you get a totally different story than what you see when people are on their broadband in the office.
Yeah. And I think also, to your point, where you're talking about e-commerce, that is something that you really need to focus on, is your mobile speed. The downside is, like, I've been offering page speed optimization services for 3 years now. I was probably one of the first ones to start doing it. And now all of a sudden everyone's experts. And the downside is most of us use WordPress. And what happens is we're limiting ourselves because of HTML, pure HTML, custom coded site. Obviously, WordPress is HTML, but it's in CMS, is a lot faster fundamentally than WordPress CMS right off the bat. And then we add all these plugins and fancy designs and stuff, and we can slow down our website so much that it makes it a pain in the ass for visitors, particularly on mobile, to look at. So how do we test that? And the number one tool that's going out right now, and is PageSpeed Insights. I have always hated PageSpeed Insights, and I always recommend and don't like to use it. Ted, you can jump in anytime you're ready, but
yeah, I know you.
The main reason I hate this thing is one, it grades you, and it even faults you for Google properties, Google fonts. Most sites are using Google fonts. It faults you for analytics. It faults you for YouTube. God forbid you put a map on your website.
And some of those are legitimate faults. Like if you use the default YouTube video player on your website, there's code in that video player that will actually do internet connection speed testing. It'll send bogus bandwidth across just to test the connection speed. So if you change your video player, I mean, you can eliminate so some of that is legitimate grabs.
Yeah. And also, I know where this tool came from. So PageSpeed Insights is actually a service that they tried to do. They tried to create a CDN so that they can make the internet faster. And every website, we jumped on board because they had all the data centers, all that stuff. But every website that we put on it actually slowed down. And when we talked to the Insight support people, they're like, well, yeah, you kind of have to expect that. And I was like, well, the purpose of the CDN is to make it faster, not slower. And the only thing that survived out of that busted program is this stupid tool, which is now using, was it Lighthouse is what it's called? That's what they're testing it with. And if you don't know, it diverts basically straight over to mobile first. And that's how it's testing. It's pretending it's a 4G connection, I believe is what it's set to. And that's how it gauges your page speed and your optimization time. So take this with a grain of salt. I don't even like getting my customers on it. And the reason is, it can give you 100 out of 100. And then you run it through another tool like PingMe, GTmetrix, or the webpagetest.org. And you can see you get like a 5-second loading website. So that 100 is subjective for sure. The next tool is PingMe. This one used to be our primary. New persons or people are running it now. But the problem with PingMe now is these testing servers go away. They used to have a lot more in the US, and now they only have 2, and they keep falling in and falling out. But this is a great if you want to know what your users are seeing from a desktop experience. So I use this one just kind of, if I'm doing like a site audit or something like that. GTmetrix, have to sign in, and then you can change some of the data right here. I ran this one on my website, but you can change it right here and make sure you're picking a server that's closest to you. Again, they used to have a whole lot more. But this stuff is popular nowadays, and I think the resources are killing them. So that's why they're cutting down. But sign in and change it to Dallas if you're using if you're targeting a U.S. audience. And the same if you're targeting UK or Canada or whatever, to use the server from that area to see how your visitors are going to learn that experience. Downside of this tool is that the end time that it gives you is the full load time. So your site is already usable and visible to the users well before it's completely loaded, and you're actually only getting the completely loaded time with GT metrics. They eliminated some of the other times for whatever reason. They did a blog post about it, but the reason was dumb in my opinion.
Well, there's one potential reason, and that's total page weight. So if you have a 10 megabyte product photo and you're trying to send it to a 4G mobile phone, there's going to be some serious lag.
Yeah.
So a lot of people overlook that, your total page weight. And, I find online retailers are notoriously guilty for this. They'll have a 10 megabyte or greater average page view, and it's a huge waste of resources, and it's terrible for mobile users.
Yeah, Shopify store owners are really bad at that too. They go out and get the best pictures possible and then upload that full-size image, and then Shopify is only showing the thumbnail, but they're loading that full image. So.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah. So this has its uses, but our primary tool, the one that we use here, is webpagetest.org. This was actually a project backed by Google when they first started out.
I love this tool.
Yeah, it's hands down the best one. It gives you all the best numbers. I could run it, but it takes a little bit of time. But just go in here and you'll see it. You can choose different locations. You can see way more locations, way more different devices that you can test against. And so that alone makes it useful. There are some locations in there, just warn you right now, that have, it's, essentially waiting in line. So the more features that you try to plug in here, you might have to deal with that. But for the most part, it runs pretty clean. And then you can pick different browsers, et cetera, and then see how it's going to go. Don't get too much in the weeds on this. If you want to do like Ted does, you just pick a mobile experience and run with it like that. There are some more settings in here. You can slow down and pick the speed of the users, etc. You want to see what old dial-up internet was and how your website would do with that old dial-up, go ahead and plug it in there. I don't know why you would, but hey, there you go. But there's some different options in there for you just to play with. You can also do this video stuff, and once the test is done, you give it and you can hand out that video to your clients if you want to. Number of tests to run is just so that you can get an average. Leave it at 3. You don't have to change it to any higher unless you're just you know that you set up a cache and you want to make sure that cache is getting built. Then maybe you would do 9, but most of especially in WordPress, which is what we deal with, most of those preload cache stuff are actually pretty quick. And once the page is called the first time, it'll hit that cache and be pretty good. So, Ted, do you have any other tools that you like to use, or any other features in this tool that you want to point out?
Well, when you run a test in this, it gives you a URL to the test results. So it's easy to share those test results with other people in your company or with the client. The other thing I like about it is that it gives you the page weight, so you can see how just bulky the web page is. It gives you the waterfall too. One thing I wish these tools would do, but there's no way they could have known because Google doesn't share this information, is that you need to try to keep your JavaScript execution time under 1.2 seconds of CPU processing, because after that, Google doesn't pick up the changes. So if you're executing JavaScript for 1.7 seconds, then you've got potentially an SEO problem with your JavaScript. So I'd like to see, warnings come up when JavaScript execution time exceeds 1.2 seconds.
Huh. That's pretty interesting. Yeah, honestly, I think from a service provider thing, the biggest points that I like to point out is one, realize that you're using a theme and you can't, in most cases, mess around too much with the code. So when you're using minification in particular, you have to just be really careful. I like to defer as much as I can so that nothing is render blocking. And then also the biggest thing we always run into is sliders get picked up by minification. And typically, if you shut off the CSS combine, all that stuff will come back and be working properly. So I think those are my big takeaways. On the tools, again, the rest of those I really don't use. Webpagetest.org is actually hands down. It's got everything that I need for everything else. So
yeah. Another thing that I think that people miss when they're trying to address page speed is the reason to use a CDN. A lot of people think, oh, well, the CDN has a faster internet and a faster server, but my company has a really fast internet and a really fast server, so why bother with the CDN? What they don't realize is that in addition to that, the CDN is configured to minimize the headers and the cookies being communicated from all those static resources. So when you put your images and your JavaScript files and your CSS files out on the CDN, you actually don't send the 5,000 cookies that you've configured in Tag Manager on each one of those resources. So, I'd like it if these tools would complain more when you're sending redundant, unnecessary cookies and headers. That would be a terrific thing. So if you're watching testing tools, look for that, complain about it.
Yeah. I think CDN is probably a really good topic, and which ones are the best. Personally, I use WP Rocket, W3 Offload, and I send to Amazon S3.
Yeah,
CDN.
Amazon is so cheap for CDN; it's practically free.
Oh yeah, I think I spend like 3 cents a month.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, if there are any questions in the chat, now's the time. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and close out the show. And Ted, I saw one. I thought I saw one for you. Nope. Matthew, how's the course doing? Oh, will you be going into Black Hat stuff? So what that course is, what we're going to do is our sales guy over the top SEO, he wants to learn search engine optimization. Because if you're not diversifying your income, you're dying. So you're leaving yourself out there, and that's what he wants to do. He wants to learn more search engine optimization. I taught him enough to make him dangerous, but we want to actually go deep dive into that. So that's going to be the format of the course. Start to finish, we're going to guide him on keyword research, picking domains, on-page optimization, link building. And so there will be 2 people, me teaching and him doing, him asking questions. And I think that's going to make the course way more valuable. And then I'm going to go in and bring in some guest people to just kind of talk. Like when we get to the advanced on-page stuff, we'll bring Kyle in so he can tell us about POP and how to leverage that more properly. And when we get into the super duper hard crap of technical SEO and tying in a Quora report, we'll bring Ted in and that kind of process. Hopefully I can even convince Grind to come on and talk to us about link building. I'm not betting on it. But that'd be really good just to kind of expand that course and make it something that's going to be valuable. Also, we're going to make a forum with that, so it's not going to be just a course. One of those $14.97 courses you buy, you go through the videos and ta-da, you're done. We're going to make a forum, and that forum is going to be the basis of everything, and a mastermind and getting students in there, etc. How exclusive I make it in the pricing and stuff is still kind of up into the air, but we want to make sure that we provide the best material for you in a way that you're actually going to use it. and be able to go step by step. So we're just kind of figuring that whole delivery thing out. Let's see. Searching for more questions. Let's see, Adrian, I like webpagetest.org, but it looks a bit complicated to read for a beginner like me. Ted, you're kind of more advanced. Do you find that to be too much?
They give you a summary block at the top, so you can skip the waterfall if you don't want to get into the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
So just use the summary that they provide at the top that just gives you the basic facts.
Yeah, when you publish that out, you get the grades. It's A through F. I think grades are for school kids, but they're there. But the two numbers I look at is first byte and start render. And as long as that start renders in 3 seconds and that first byte is faster than when I started, and we kind of consider that a success. What numbers do you use?
And those are like numbers 3 and 4 on my list. Like if you're an absolute beginner to speeding up your website, just reduce page weight, optimize your images, make them smaller, reduce the number of asynchronous requests that your browser's making. So they'll give you a number, because most people don't realize when you fire up a browser on your desktop, it'll only load 5 things at a time. So if you have, 150 images and 50, include files and 75 things configured and tag manager, and it's only going to load 5 of those at a time, and that's going to bottleneck your load time. So if you can reduce the number of parallel things the browser is trying to load, your page gets very, very fast. So I tend to look at, let's make the assets smaller that are being loaded. Let's reduce the number of asynchronous requests. And then we can start looking at, time to first byte and those things that typically require a lot of server configuration and things like that.
Yeah. So I think the problem you have to balance, in my opinion, is how do you make a pretty site that represents you, because most people want pretty. You can't help it. Clients want pretty, but is also loading quickly. And I agree with you with the image size and the image amount. That's probably the number one and number two factors that we see page speed optimization. So,
yeah, for example, like a common problem on e-commerce clothing websites is you go and look at like a shirt, and in the description, there'll be a sizing chart. And oftentimes it'll be, an unoptimized, very large graphic that they scaled down. Just make the sizing chart in HTML. And it goes from being a huge image loading to being, one less asynchronous request that takes 0 bandwidth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. If you're doing something with an image that you can do with HTML, then you should probably be doing that. So that's a good tip. I like that. But back to that question. So it is complicated, Adrian. But really, if you're looking at, again, what he's saying is the page size. So look at that and then first byte and start render, then you're okay. When you're looking at the waterfalls, just look for the long lines. The long lines are the bad lines. is essentially how that works out. And if you see a bunch of those, then you probably want to address it.
And if you see blocks of 5 and then another block of 5 and then another block of 5, that's that asynchronous behavior.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. Next question from the last show. What if we go level 2 deep, meaning money page, page 1, YTV video, send links to the YTV video and link to page 1 and MP. So that'll work. I've actually ranked money pages using just the video link. So you can actually just go direct to your money page at that point, depending on the quality of your backlink. You don't need a buffer at that point. You know what I mean? So if you're sending them from real legit high authority websites, don't use that page 1 to buffer your backlink. You don't have to. It's a real legit high authority page. Send it to your money page. And the other, the page, that second stack, I don't know if you watched the last show, Ted, but basically what we're talking about is tiers and how I use that tier 1, internal tier 1, to buffer my backlinks when I'm sending some stuff that might be suspect. And in this case, where you're sending that from, I really wouldn't even mess with the page 1. I would send that directly to you. So if you're syndicating a video, like if I took SEO this week and I syndicated on Vimeo and Dailymotion and all that stuff, I'd link directly to the website, to the page that I'm trying to rank, which would be the SEO this week page, versus a sub page for whatever reason.
Yeah, and that concept of internal tier 1, I mean, I consider that some next level stuff. I know you think it's like basic fundamentals, but that's actually a really cool concept.
Yeah, I'm ranking. I got clients paying $30,000, $40,000 a month, and we're ranking, just sending links to those internal tier 1s, and not even hitting money pages. And it's working like gangbusters. So if you're not leveraging your own website to buffer and to boost your money pages, you guys are messing up. Let's see, Ted, question for you. Any option on Core to allow the user to correlate their own keywords, like say the common first 10 pages words?
Yeah, I'm a little confused by the question. We do have a full report dedicated to keyword density, and it shows you the density for all of the variants, and then it breaks out each individual variation for keyword density, and the exact match is one of those variations. So I would need a better description of what it is you're looking for beyond that. And it's probably hard to do in a YouTube chat. So feel free to reach out to me via Skype or through the website if you want me to elaborate.
It sounds like what he's saying is I want to take the TF, IDF, and say what's the density of those for the top 10 pages. So Core kind of does that, but that'll be interesting to see when he gets to you what he's looking for. Can expired high metric domains help if I just do a 301 redirect versus building PBN with them? This is a question from Keto Care, by the way. I actually prefer doing the 301 versus building the PBN because PBNs take work. And when I do build them out, I make them into real websites that generate real traffic and make real money just so that they pay for themselves.
No.
But if I'm buying, and Ted might have a different process, but if I'm buying a domain and let's say it's got 10 backlinks and I only want one of them, then I'll just 301 that thing to wherever I want it to go.
Well, what I've noticed, and again, going back to fundamentals, is that if you buy a domain name and 301 the whole thing to your homepage, it does nothing because Google kind of treats it like a soft 404.
It depends on how you set it up. So if you set up the redirect, let's say you buy a domain and it's got 5 pages that are of real value. And typically, if you're going to do this, they're going to be related to your website anyway. So you go back into Wayback, find out what that topic is, and create those pages. And now there's your tier 1s and your 301, and you do the 301 at the HT access and send that old URL to the new version.
And that I do get great results from.
Yeah.
When I get an expired domain and I, instead of 301ing it to the home page, I 301 to an internal page, boom, off the hook.
Right. And to avoid the soft 404s that you're talking about is if you don't want to go through and do the HT access and all that madness, you just send it to your website. Use a plugin like Yoast. This is where Yoast is actually really helpful, or SEO Press does it as well. And it connects to Search Console and tells you where those soft 404s are. And you redirect those as the traffic pops those in to where you want them to go. And the soft 404s will go away. So, like I have one that has, it's got a lot of traffic to user profiles. So I got the soft 404, so I changed that to a page where it actually describes the author of that website, and that's where all those user profiles go to. Is now the author of that website, and that website author page has links and it's sending juice to some of the money pages. So that's how you leverage that and get around that soft 404 thing. Hopefully that makes sense.
Well, there's a clarification on the previous question. I was asking if I can correlate keywords other than the bold Google text, meaning keywords I will choose. And that's really interesting. Is there an option to force a match word? You know, I don't see a reason why that couldn't exist. I'm not sure how beneficial it would be, but I am rather fond of giving people tools to prove me wrong. I'll put it on the feature request list. Yeah, maybe.
I guess that might be useful if you're trying to optimize. You know, a lot of people want to optimize for more than one term. I can see how that might be useful. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'd put that as a solid maybe. I'll add it to the feature request list.
Let's see. Next question. If I use Cloudflare CDN, do I need W3 Total Cache? I use W3 Total Cache for my service. It used to be the primary plugin. I can optimize a website in probably about 15, 20 minutes using W3 Total Cache, but I've used it a lot. So if you don't know how to use it, go with a plugin called Breeze or WP Rocket or Auto Optimize, depending on your host. But I never, ever, 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 no matter what I'm doing, integrate my plugin with Cloudflare. And as a matter of fact, I don't even use the Cloudflare plugin because it actually slows down the website. I've seen it every time, no matter which one I use. If I hook Cloudflare up to that speed optimization plugin, something that Cloudflare does, and during that connection, that actually adds time to the load time. So I never let a plugin control Cloudflare. I just go into Cloudflare and do it manually. So hopefully that answers that question. Can I use an expired clean domain with some good matrix as my money website? Good metrics as my money website. There's a couple of schools of thought to that. Is one, if you follow MacDiggity, he did a test where he's saying it takes 60 days for that to the expired domain to be, trusted again. On the flip side of that, I've seen plenty of people who take expired domains and turn them into money sites. What you got to be careful when you're buying those for that purpose is making sure that they stay on niche, because it just takes longer if you're trying to reuse them for something else. You buy a plumber site and you're trying to use it for an electrician, you're going to have some issues. It's going to take some time to build the entity and authority and all that madness, which kind of defeats the purpose of buying something that's already got good metrics already. So, yes, you can. You just have to anticipate that it's just going to take you some time to kick that off. Ted, have you tried any of that expired domains for money sites?
Yeah, this goes back to all the debates about is there not a sandbox? And historically, SEOs that did testing would find that there was an algorithmic sandbox where there's this period of time where you don't get credit for your backlinks. And so when you see those people who are saying, oh, there is a sandbox, and what they are talking about is at what point does your domain get credit for backlinks? And that's where when you use the link operator in Google, we know that it's bogus. It doesn't give you the right data. But the diagnostic test historically has been, do you get anything to show up with the link operator versus nothing? And that's the diagnostic test. And so if you're stuck with nothing with the link operator, then historically that's how we'd find out if you're still in that algorithmic sandbox where you don't get credit for backlinks. Yeah. And in the past, it's taken up to 10 months to crawl your way out of that sandbox. I'd hope that in this day and age, Google's more kind, and hopefully that's less, but I haven't tested it recently. But I know that in the past, it has been months.
And what I found when they're doing that, especially if I'm turning that into a PBN, is I get those links recrawled and I send fake traffic through them to make sure that if Google has forgotten about that connection, those backlinks to that expired domain, or it said, oh, look, the expired domain's gone. I want to reinvigorate the bot and say, hey, look, it's back. And that should pick it up a little bit more. I'm not going to guarantee that it will do it all every time, but that's a good way to make sure that those links are seen again.
And that's a really good hypothesis, is that Google takes those connections and says, belong to the old owner, throws them away. Yeah. And Google's processes might have to rediscover them for them to count. And what Clint suggested might accelerate them getting rediscovered.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people that say that, you know, I think John Mueller even said, oh, we kind of reset. So that makes sense to me. You know, the domain died. Google had all this data on that domain, and it went back one day and it's gone. And Google's like, all right, delete. And then, so now you have to start over, which, you know, is really just a basic process of, instead of having to build links, now you just kind of say, hey, Google, we're back. So that was my process every time I did it. It works sometimes. It doesn't work every time. So you just got to play with it. And also build new links too. So that helps too. Let's see. Cheers, guys. It was, and I got an F for pictures. That's Adrian. Yeah. If you got an F for pictures, you need to do what Ted talked about. Image optimization. If it's a WordPress site, WP Smush Pro is hands down my favorite. It'll change the sizes of your pictures based off of where your theme is serving, and make those all auto for you. So it does what Ted talked about, and it fixes the picture to make it appropriate for the placement of the website. And use the CDNs. I'll knock those out for you. See, Mark D, if you see a monster HTML call time of 8.2, what do you recommend tweaking? Oh, geez. That was pretty broad. I don't think we can, unless Ted, you're mind reader, I'm not sure that we could really address that. But
well, I'd start with the basics. Yeah. And I tend to not panic about it, because by and large website page times are pretty awful, especially when you go to mobile. You take anybody to a mobile connection and they lose all the pride they have. So just take the basic steps, start with the basics, reduce page weight, reduce the number of asynchronous loads, convert unnecessary images that could be done in HTML to HTML. Just start doing the simple basic things that move you in the right direction, and you'll get there in time.
Yeah. The biggest factors, if it's a WordPress site, is plugins, and sliders in particular are horrible. Typically, if I want to know if it's a plugin that's causing page speed time, I shut them all off and then test it again. And if that 8.2 is gone, now you know that's a plugin issue. Plugins also affect your first byte time, so you can check that out. And again, it's some of us go crazy. I've worked on sites with 80 plugins, so you just need to be careful in what you're doing and audit your stuff at the same time. So if you put a plugin on that feature's cool, and that next quarter you're doing your audit and no one uses that feature, then take that plugin off. And those little things and those little audits will keep your page speed time down automatically. And really, at the end of the day, you're just looking for something to load faster than 3 seconds. And that's what Google's looking for. They've said it time and time again. We just want you loading faster than 3 seconds. So you can have all those fancy numbers you want, but as long as your page is loading and usable in 3 seconds on any device, then you're going to be all right. So.
Yeah, in online retail, the culprits are often your real-time chat integration. So speaking with the customer, oftentimes those things are loading a billion heavy things on every single page view.
Yep.
And so if you just had a link to chat instead of loading chat on every page, that's often very beneficial. The other thing is your similar products and your popular product carousels. People often go, well, we should put 50 products in these carousels so we get the maximum opportunity to upsell. You're loading 50 product images in addition on each page. So look at those carousels. Those are notorious.
And the other one is social plugins. Some of those are really bad. So Let's see. Next question. I find many sites are arranged very well for adult phrases in one foreign language. They span their pages with 2 to 3,000 meaningless words, images, and 2 to 300 external links. That's possible. Yeah. Foreign languages are pretty weird because I think the rules change. And Ted, you can correct me if you've seen something different because you do more multinational sites than I do. But it's just easier in some of those essentially search engines because you're using a different set of database, and it's like the rules are different from one country to another, or one .com to .co.uk to .au. So I think in some countries you can just get away with more than what you can here in the U.S.
Yeah, Google's largely an English-speaking company, and just by a factor of the number of people that are policing, it's easier to break the rules in foreign languages.
Yeah.
Especially on any of the manual review stuff. And, I'd bet that a lot of the anti-spam, anti-black hat SEO stuff is, got a lot of English language bias in it. So yeah, I'd imagine that you'd find a lot more going on there. Additionally, the rules historically have seemed different. Like I know a long time ago, there were different rules about the number of times you could use keywords in your title, and you could break those rules on the international data centers, but you couldn't in the US data center. And Google has also admitted to rolling out for US and global first, and then doing international is separate follow-on deployments. So we know that they even deploy differently.
Yeah, I think that's from, the U.S. market it's just the biggest market right now. And until that changes, I think that's probably going to continue to stay the course. It'd be cool if China opened up to Google more, because then they can test all that crap on China and we can get away with more over here in the U.S. Let's see. He also followed on. They do meta redirect to CPA adult offers. I will tell you, being in the adult niche, that Google has got manual reviewers now, and they're going to those sites, especially in the adult niche, and finding those redirects and hitting you with abusive experience notices. And what they're doing is in Chrome, they're shutting you down so that you can't do those pop-ups. You can't do pop-ups, pop-unders, or meta redirects from your website anymore. Google Chrome won't respond to it. So,
all right, can we take a moment to do a Nelson from The Simpsons aha at Google for paying people to look at porn?
I think it's awesome. My guess is too, it's probably some poor Indian guys, and they're like, some of them are really religious, and then they're like, hey, go check out the porn industry, and they're like, oh, great. So they're already pissed off as it is, and they're really sensitive. Sometimes they pick things that aren't a meta redirect and aren't used in the way that what he's describing. I will say that Ted did a test kind of like what he's talking about when he's ready to publish that stuff. You'll probably see that on the SEO Fight Club. So I would stay tuned just to see how or what that test involved. I know some of it. It's kind of, it's way over my head. Him and Kyle talk a lot about that test, but when he's ready to post that, then I think you guys will be pretty amazed at what you can get away with if you know some of the technical stuff of how Google operates. And let's see, Michael Hale, currently have a client with a number of mini sites and different hosts with some links back to the money site. If using something Cloudflare for the mini sites, could Google find them as a mini network of sites? Google can already find them. They don't even need Cloudflare if you're creating mini sites like that. We do it as a standard practice in some niches. So it's not, as long as you don't go full retard, then you're going to be okay. I think our biggest one is probably 1,000 mini sites pointing to one site. But those mini sites also have their own individual purpose and ranking and CTA. it's kind of natural to have them there. It's just really subjective to the person that's going to manually review it. So if you add it to Cloudflare, many of you, I don't know if you do or not, but they use Google Data cloud servers as part of that. It's part of that Cloudflare network. So, but I don't think, in my opinion, that just by the purpose of having there is going to help you those get pinned out. You got to piss a competitor off. They're going to dig into your network. They're going to find the mini sites and they're going to report you. And then eventually, if Google decides they want to get involved with it, they'll go in there and hit your mini sites. But honestly, I think we've had one set up for like 3 years now. It's fine.
Yeah, and keep in mind that Cloudflare can interrupt with the cheaper SEO tools on the market that don't render pages.
Yeah.
So just note that you might get bad data from SEO tools if you throw Cloudflare in front of all of it.
No, I think that's with a lot of them. Like, SEMrush has some issues sometimes. I know they definitely have issues with their site audit tool. I think all the site audit tools right now are having issues with Shopify, that kind of stuff. So that's something to also keep in mind.
Yeah. Not Cora. I am embedding Chrome.
Question for Ted. What's the show tomorrow? What time?
11 a.m. Pacific time.
11 a.m. Pacific. My favorite cache plugin depends on your host. Get really good with W3 Total Cache and or Breeze. If you don't want to learn W3 Total Cache because that thing is complicated, use Breeze. Turn Breeze on, set the basic settings, and for the most part, you're going to be okay. Have you tried a double 301 using a URL shortener and sending links to spam the tier 2 URL shorteners? Yeah, you have to be real careful with those. Google is caught on with that 301 and sending spam to the 301. So the definition, tons of spam, if you're talking like GSA Seer, X-Rumor and stuff like that, is kind of not working too much anymore. Because Google is following that 301 and figuring that out. I would just play with it. I would send it probably to your tier 1 website, your backlinks, not the ones on your money site, but to your actual tier 1 backlinks, and test that a little bit better. I know that you can send those to direct to Google properties, and that seems to be working really well in filtering out any bad juice. Pastor Duke, what do you think of acquiring links from DA 70 plus sites and then putting PBN links to those and powering them up? Does it work? Is it worth the cost? I think it's a DA 70 site, and if it's that popular already, you're going to get the power from it. You can send PBN links to it if you want to pass a little bit more. But in my opinion, if it's already a DA 70, then you're kind of, spinning your wheels. Just send some links to it. Make sure it's indexed. Give it a little bit of PA love if that's what you're following. And leave it at that. Ted, have you tested that? I'm not sure, but have you tested any of that?
I tend to be very fundamental with backlinks. I'll always practice safe backlinking. So if you're making artificial links, be sure you have an intermediate page to route them through before sending them to a money site. Never ever make a mess you can't clean up. But in my opinion, a link is a link, and it's really hard to get an honest link these days. So I'm not saying no to any of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it really just depends on the amount of work that you want to do. And if it's a really good site, you don't even have to dink around with it. Like YouTube's a really good site, even if you just put it on a brand new YouTube video and it passes a decent amount of juice. So those apply to those DA 70 plus sites too. You can do it if you want to pass more power and leverage the PBNs, but it's something you need to test out. Can you turn a Firebase link into a 301 instead of 302? Nope, you can't. I've been dealing with that ever since they switched Firebase. Capsule link is the one we're using now. You can use tinyurl, bit.ly, just watch those two. Sometimes they switch from 301s to 302s back and forth. But capsule link is paid, and it's always a 301. And I can change them as much as I want. Or you can go buy some of those expired domains that we're all talking about and create your own 301 redirect tool. Let's see your opinion on Uber Suggest. That's a decent tool. It's how you use it, in my opinion. And then the last question is Robert Reacts, currently testing it for Parasite SEO projects. How important is social signals when you do those kinds of campaigns? Double 301 social signals. Ted, I got my own opinion about social signals. I'd like to kind of hear yours before I rattle off.
Likes are not a factor, and I don't think Google will ever make them a factor because they're so exploitable.
Yeah.
What I tend to see is that the social integration itself appears to matter. So you definitely want to integrate for liking, sharing, and commenting. Like Google likes to see that on the page. And then the big mistake I think people make in all of that is they don't no-follow those Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest buttons. And so they spend their page rank boosting Facebook, and Facebook does not need your page rank. So just make sure that you no-follow all those social integrations, especially site-wide. That's an awful lot of leakage.
I used to do that too, is no-follow because you're promoting theirs. But if you have those optimized properly, in my opinion, you're just kind of creating a power loop because you're linking to your page, and that page, your page has a link to your site. So it's kind of the perpetual flow. And these days are just kind of expected to be there. I agree with you that likes are useless. It doesn't trigger anything on Facebook that you get that value out of that. What I think the value is the shares, and the SIA tested this, and shares gets ranking increases versus likes as well. Retweets are the same thing. You're going to get some juice out of that, although we can't see those numbers anymore. And I think it's the way you do and leverage your social signals that's better. So if you go to Facebook or to Fiverr and buy a whole bunch of shares and no traffic comes, then Google's not going to really care about those signals.
Yeah.
Versus if you're sharing and getting, like I used to do, what I used to do is you can find me everywhere on Facebook because I was going to pages that had traffic and I was leaving links to my blog posts. So I was getting that share and I was getting traffic from those, which is where I think the real value from the social comes from.
And I asked Paul Haar in person if Google was using Open Graph in the process of ranking websites. And it's the only time I've ever gotten a direct answer out of someone from Google. He looked at me and said, yes. So make sure you have your Open Graph on page and populated and tuned.
Yep. Perfect. And that's another option if you're using Cora or Pop to add another match term. You can mess around with those Open Graph stuff too. All right, that's it. We've been here for an hour and 20 minutes. Actually, a long one, just because we had so many questions. Listen, everybody, I wanted to thank you for coming in. As long as you're engaging with me, I'll stay on here as long as I can. And that is the way a community helps each other. And Ted, I want to thank you and appreciate you for coming. One last time, SEO Fight Club tomorrow. What time?
11 a.m. Pacific time.
11 a.m. And just so you know, he already dropped the big old teaser. He's going to give another great knowledge bomb. So go on to SEO Fight Club on YouTube, subscribe, make sure you get the notifications, and watch that first one on keyword density. I think you're going to be surprised, especially if you've been following Rand and and everyone else who says keyword density doesn't matter. This has been SEO This Week. Again, thanks everybody, and see you next week.
Bye-bye.